When I was in Iraq, if they told me, Mo, you guys were going to be on a convoy coming back, and they said, we don't have any Asian snipers, bro, you better get me the best shooter.
Equality of opportunity.
Right.
Not equality of outcome.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's an era of change, of ideals and cultures constantly colliding. We need brave people who will find the way of hope in the chaos, who will elevate truth in their speech and activate reform in their lives. Lee Sloan welcomes you to this Brave Nation.
Hey, we're excited to come back to Brave Nation with a new guest I have. I'm here in California with my new friend, Mo Arnold, Maurice.
That's
Mo
right.
Arnold. Molosophy, right?
Most definitely.
That's
Come
your
on.
brand name. Molosophy.com. You can find him there. He does a consulting, organizational consulting
Development.
and team building. And he talks about our favorite little acronym, DEI. It can either excite you or it can cause you to twitch a little bit.
Most definitely.
It's a little bit of, a buzzword in our culture. I was actually asking my son, he was like, well, what is DEI? I was like, oh, maybe not everybody is super familiar with it. Maybe the next generation isn't going to use DEI. I don't know. But right now it's a big thing, and actually I think it's shifting a little bit. So talk to me about your world and what you do.
Well, first of all, I like to say thank you.
Yeah.
And just knowing your family and the orchard that you come from, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And so your family is a godly family that birthed such a heritage. And before I get started, I would like to make a comment. In the book of Proverbs, it says that the spirit of a man trains his mind with wisdom. And I would say when it comes to communicators and someone who has communication at a level which deals with cultural relevance, you are second to none.
Thank you.
And because the heart trains the mind, wisdom, I relate this to you in this sense. You have such a heart of reconciliation. It trains you to build bridges of understanding so that people, no matter where they stand, they could actually cross over to that bridge. You're great at creating common ground.
Awesome.
And so your ability to communicate just comes from a pure heart. That's what makes it so definitive.
Thank you.
And that's why I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. We have a lot to talk about because I know you've read my book, Pride and Privilege.
Hey, come on.
We both have copies here. Pride and
Yes,
Privilege.
come on.
And
you gotta get this book because she speaks the language of culture in a manner that is not offensive. Now, it's okay to be offended at the truth, but she's never offensive. And so that book is spot on, and she is a premier person that I brag about when it comes to language.
Can I take you on the road with me? Come on. Just sell everything that I do. This is so helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so what we do kind of, dovetails a little bit. And
Yes.
I love how you brought some notes here about, what you listen when you listen to the audiobook of it. And the audiobook, hopefully you guys will be coming out really, really soon.
Yes.
But when you listen to it, you take it and you kind of molosify it
Right.
a little bit. You put your own spin on it,
Oh
you
my
own it.
Right. And what makes the book so relevant is that Lee brings distilled wisdom to a lot of things that people trip over. Like one of the things in the book that you bring out is about godly love versus ungodly love. You're saying that godly love brings a level of accountability. We're not just pushovers. We don't let people just do anything. We forgive people, but there's still consequences and people are held accountable.
Right.
It is a firmness with care.
Right.
And so, just the nuggets I've gotten from your book.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to focus on you.
All right. Okay.
So let's talk about doubt. Let's start with DEI, okay?
Right.
Why you talk about DEI, but then you actually replace those words, diversity, equity, and inclusion, with other words, and explain to me how you do that and why you do that.
Right. Well, First of all, let me give a little journey of where this came from. At one point, when I got into the Air Force and I rose to the rank of Senior Master Sergeant, I was an instructor at the Senior Non-Commissioned Officers Academy. And at that point, I became the DEI program manager for the entire school. And the Senior Non-Commissioned Officers Academy is a flagship leader development institute in the air for the enlisted corps. And so with me being over the DEI portion, I oversaw what was going into those books when it came to DEI and training those top leaders across the Air Force. Well, I got to meet Dr. Samuel Betances, who became my mentor, and he was a DEI consultant to 5 presidents.
Wow.
And so the things that he taught me, and one of the first things he taught me is that diversity isn't about counting heads, it's about making heads count. And so it's not all about just placing, it's not like a box of Skittles. We need 3 red, 5 blue.
That's what it seems like.
Right. And to these positions, that isn't cool.
Quotas, yeah.
Right, exactly. And DEI has a negative connotation, and it deals with, the negative connotation comes around white male bashing, blame harvesting, and bringing up all the issues of the past. Those issues are relevant. But guess what? If I'm a business owner right now and I live in Silicon Valley and I created a new tech company and you come to talk to me about what happened 200 years ago, I'm here to address you into now because I struggled to get to this position. And I don't know anything about that. I have compassion, I care, but at the same time, I want you to come in competent. And I'm not saying that people within the DEI space don't want people to be competent, but it's more so about placing people in positions and seeing that in this organization, we're missing, or we don't see any women at this level. Well, let me back up a little bit. When President Jimmy Carter, who just passed, he had Clifford Alexander, who was the Secretary of the Army. Now, Clifford Alexander began to look through his data and he was the first black Secretary of the Army. He said, why is it that we don't have any black generals or black colonels in the Army? Well, because people of color were not put into promotable positions. And so because they were not put into promotable positions, they were not developed to the level that they could man the top positions, where they could populate the top positions. And so he began to make changes. Well, if somebody made that same argument today and they said, why aren't black people in dominant positions when it comes to certain spots in the military, especially with the Army? I was Air Force, but especially the Army, where you get promoted the closer you are to combat. Well, I'm from the inner city, and I've been around enough gunshots.
Right.
Most of my peers that are black don't want to be in the infantry on the front line.
Sure.
And so some of that can be explained in that. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, but when you paint everything as racist,
Right.
Nothing is.
They're not putting themselves in those positions.
Right. They're not putting themselves in that position.
And women do the same thing, right?
Exactly. Women do the same thing. Hey, there are not any women in these positions. No. I went out with the Green Berets. No, there were not any women there. And rightfully so. Not that because there was a weight carrying requirement and all of that. So something totally different. But DEI has that negative connotation when you just do the broad brush. But we got to look at things individually.
Yeah.
And I got this note that I took here because DEI is really beginning to fail because of vision and language.
Interesting.
Because of vision and language. All problems begin with thinking and language. And so let me touch on vision a minute. And let me give you a key principle. When it comes to DEI, you primarily want to advocate for a person, a level of competence and character, not a people. Now, notice, now I know someone may try to argue with this, but I said primarily. Primarily, you want to advocate for a person, a level of competence and character, not a people, because you're doing a broad brush. So when I open the aperture so that everybody can come into the organization, then
Equality of opportunity.
Right.
Not equality of outcome.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So you So you bring them through the door, and then you set everybody up, and then people decide how high they want to go. If people don't want to pay the price, I appreciate you.
Right.
We're not putting you at the top level.
Nothing wrong with that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is in most DEI cases, we deal with the fruit of the issue instead of dealing with the root of the issue. The root of it is really, we want to address the vision of the organization. So when I go in and I talk to an organization, I first want to see their vision. What is the vision of your organization? Because when I build, I'm what's called an organizational architect. I build from vision, mission, and core values. From there, I go into leadership development, succession planning, and strategy. And DEI is up higher, so most people treat DEI like a silo, like it's a separate entity. But it doesn't have a skeletal system to connect with. DEI may be a muscle at the high level, but it doesn't have the skeletal system of mission, vision, and core values, so people don't buy into it. And so that's the primary problem. So when I go in and I begin to tie it to vision, mission, and core values and say, hey, you said that you like this in your organization. Like, say, for instance, the vision for Molosophy. As organizational architects and cultural consultants, we build and cultivate top-tier communities of excellence.
Wow.
That's the vision of Molosophy. Now, if I had something in my organization, and hold on, and let me place that in the parking lot because I'm getting hot right now. I'm getting hot right now. Let me pause. Pause. Yeah, because I'm about to go into something.
I'm just trying to clarify. So because DEI has all of this political tension associated with it, but it also, like, you live in California, so it can be a positive thing. It's something people have been asking for years and years.
Yes.
So how do you? It seems like people might be confused. Like, are you for DEI? Are you against DEI?
Yes.
So can you explain that?
Right. Most definitely. I'm for DEI. And the DEI that I present to organizations deal with the 5 business drivers: cash, assets, people, profit, and growth. That's the only way you get C-suite buy-in. So when you come in talking about social justice, the C-suite may give you an ear for a minute doing George Floyd, but that's going to begin to wane. But what's sustainable is cash, assets, people, profit, and growth. So I am for DEI, and I'm for maximizing team talent.
But the way people have defined it before as equality of outcome,
right, exactly,
with all the quotas and everything, that's the opposite of what you're talking about.
That's the opposite.
You're taking DEI and you're turning it on its head, really?
Yes.
So, and you're able to do that in California because people are asking for DEI.
People are asking for DEI, and where I presented it, the people that would be against it were actually blown away. Say, I never heard a message that was so fair across the board. It was irrefutable across the board. Now, if you got some people that are more so into victimhood, they may get upset. And I'm fine with that. Like, some people will say, hey, because I am all for DEI, I do recognize that racism, sexism, and all these things exist. However, when I go hunting, I know that there are snakes out. But when I'm deer hunting, I'm primarily focused on the deer, and I take out the snake when it appears.
Yeah.
So what happens in most DEI, they out, instead of hunting for the prize, they're looking for the snakes.
Yeah, and you use, instead of diversity, you use relationship management, replacing equity with balanced perspective, and replacing inclusion with connection.
Yes. Instead of diversity, I use relationship management. And the reason why I use relationship management, because Daniel Goleman, the architect of emotional intelligence, breaks down emotional intelligence into 4 quadrants. And the last quadrant, so self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, and then relationship management. And so diversity is all about relationship management. And at the core of any diversity initiative that we're launching, the key initiative is trust, because trust is the currency of relationships. Wherever people sense trust, they're going to give 100%.
Yeah, because you're just managing, I mean, diversity can not just be racial, it can be,
Right.
I mean, obviously it can be gender, but it could also be things that are internal. It could
Right.
be cultural. It could be where you're from. You know, somebody's from the Midwest or a big city. Like, it's going to be a little different, right?
It's going to be a little different. And one of the things about equity that I explain equity a little differently. When I look at equity, I look at the acrostic IF, if. So I place the I over the F. The common denominator is fairness. The I is investment. So at the end of the day, we're going to be fair all the time when it comes to equity, but the I is investment. And so if I am diversity in the whole thing is about qualifying the unqualified, because nobody's born qualified. They have to be qualified. In the equity piece, I may have an individual that may not be fully qualified for the position. They have the aptitude, but they don't have the acumen yet. And so I have a formula where you place individuals around them with the skill set so that you can grow them into it. You provide the support system. That's investment.
Okay.
So you may let people know, hey man, this particular position, this is all about investment. But then when it comes to fairness is straight up competence and character. You got to have both. When I was in Iraq, if they told me, Mo, you guys were going to be on a convoy coming back, and they said, we don't have any Asian snipers, bro, you better get me the best shooter.
Right.
That's what you
It's
better
about
get
your
me.
life. It's not
right,
about
right.
what
It's about
color they are. Yeah.
Exactly. It's about its age. So it's fairness. So
Right.
it's
So
it's
you're
investment
talking about
and
real
fairness.
equality, real
Right.
equality, and real equality of opportunity.
Yes.
And then they get to reach for that.
Right.
For whatever they want. Yeah.
They get to reach for it. And then inclusion is all about connection. And when it comes to inclusion, collusion is all about, not collusion, but inclusion is all about, it's a process or it's a way of bringing in marginalized people or people groups through policies, programs, and personal invitations. That's what inclusion is about. And when I say marginalized, I don't want you to think race or color or sex. I want you to think about whose skill set isn't being fully maximized within your organization. Say, for instance, you got all engineers, and one engineer comes from a diploma mill, all of them the same color, all of them black males. But these engineers over here, they said that, hey, we're of higher pedigree than you because you came from a diploma mill, but the person from the diploma mill is the greatest genius in the house, brings forth the greatest ideas, but his ideas are pushed to the side. They're marginalized, not because of color, not because of sex, but because he's considered to be of a lower echelon.
Sure.
So it's the way of looking through your entire organization and say, who's marginalized beyond color?
Yeah.
Beyond race.
Where are we not seeing the genius that's
Right.
underneath the surface?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I actually heard that. I heard somewhere, I read somewhere that it's the discrimination comes the most from the way you talk. That your accent, because you can place where somebody's from and you can immediately make assumptions about them.
Come on.
And I thought that's really, really interesting. We don't ever talk about that. There's no accent
Right.
parades going on.
Exactly. And within organizations, I was talking to a group of teachers, and I defined the difference between cliques and affinity groups. Now, affinity groups, and this ties into DEI because in many cases, people are defining, we got to give the proper definition before we can align. And so people say, well, hey, they got some cliques over there. Well, when I was talking to the teachers, I explained, I said, look, everybody, if you got a group of teachers that love dogs, like I love dogs, I love playing with them, everything. And so with me loving dogs, if I got a group of dog lovers and we just having fun and everybody, all the dog lovers are together, that's not a clique, that's an affinity group. A clique comes in with two things, when there's exclusion and when there's destruction.
Toxic tribalism, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
Toxic tribalism. When there's exclusion, you're excluding people from other people who say, hey man, you know, I'd like to spend some time with y'all. No, this is only for dog lovers. You're excluding. That begins to break down the team fabric of the organization. But then the next thing is destruction. You begin to work again. You begin to say, you know what? Ooh, I see that position. I know who has the competence and character to man this particular position. But I'm going to put my dog lover friend in this position. So you begin to destroy the vision and the mission of the organization. And so when I see exclusion and then favoritism and that type of thing where you're putting one above the other because of the affinity, then it transitions from an affinity group to...
It's not about competence. It's not about those things, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So where do you think DEI is heading? And like, because it's kind of shifting in popularity, or, you know, some people are moving hard away from it. Do you think that the language will start changing for you, or how do you think that?
The language won't change for me because honestly, I believe I'm going to be at the forefront of shifting the focus when it comes to DEI.
So DEI could look completely different. It could look almost the opposite that it has in the past. Is that what you think?
It could look the opposite, but what's going to happen is that everyone is going to get the opportunity to rise up. And so it won't be demonizing individuals. Like, say, for instance, the reason when we talk about language with DEI, one of the primary problems that we have, you can't speak to people like adversaries and then call upon them to be your ally.
Absolutely.
And so that's a problem with language. Some of the language is accusatory.
Right. And it didn't seem that way at first. Like diversity, that was always a positive word growing up for me.
Exactly.
And then equity was a little bit like equality, but you're like, it used to be a synonym for equality, right?
Right.
And then it changed to, you know, more of the quota type thing, like where you have to have equality of outcome, and that's way different from equality of opportunity. And so that word kind of got tainted in a lot of, especially conservatives' minds, right?
Right.
And then inclusion, you know, we kind of inclusion seems fine, but when you put it together, in the acronym, for some reason, it's like, it's this.
And the other thing, the other negative connotation that is associated with DEI, we have allowed other things to get morphed into it. Like, say, for instance, and I know this may not be very popular, however, I'm an advocate for everyone. However, I've had a problem with people trying to lock into DEI when they're actually being discriminated against, or people are coming against them or persecuting them for a vice.
Something really concerning that they're doing.
Something that they've chosen to do. And so what happens with DEI, other things got mixed into it.
It must be racism. It must be.
Other stuff got mixed into it. Or it could be the LBGT movement. That stuff getting married to the DEI space.
When that's more of an ideology than it is something that's...
Exactly, because that's something that could, you know, people may argue about it, but that's something that an individual could choose. No one has a sex cam in people's rooms to identify who's who. Yeah. And so, you know, people... But people will get upset about that. But it is really true. We always treat all people with dignity and respect.
Right.
However, my ancestors' blood was too sacred to let another group infringe and come in on the heels of that struggle. And so that's something that I draw a hard line with. I'm never mean.
You're saying like the LGBT movement kind of latched on to, you know, getting people up out of slavery and like tantamount to that, right?
Tantamount to that, tantamount to civil rights.
Yeah.
And so that is, man, my, my grandfather and my grandfather, people in this area were hung.
Yeah.
So I don't, people's Achilles tendons were cut, for trying to escape slavery. Like all of that struggle, I don't allow.
And it wasn't an ideology. It was just.
It wasn't an ideology.
You can't change the color of your
Right.
skin.
You can't change it. Right. Yes. Yeah.
It wasn't something you bought into or.
Exactly. You can't change your pigmentation. But you can do something about your orientation. That's something, but we don't, like I say, I don't bash people on that, but I know that I'm on the Brave Conversations podcast, and this is how I get down. So I just speak the truth in love. Truth and love are Siamese twins. They're inseparable. So I just speak the truth. I don't bash people, but I know that a lot of my contemporaries have flowed in a level of cowardice.
Yeah.
They refuse to say something on this, but it's something that I will not, that I won't be a part of.
Yeah. There's that I always talk about that dichotomy of wisdom and courage.
Right.
And some people err on the side of courage where they just say whatever. And
right. You just say whatever.
They're not going to worry about how they say it at all. But then there's people who maybe over-temper what they're saying, and they don't actually speak the truth. Right,
they don't actually speak the truth because in their case, wisdom is camouflage cowardice.
Cowardice.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make it look like, I'm just exercising. No, you're afraid. You just like vertebrae. So we just don't come in and just attack people and do that type of thing, but we do stand flat-footed.
Absolutely.
And be honest.
Yeah. So this kind of relates to what I said about privilege in my book. What did you think? Because a lot of people, when I come and talk about privilege, especially if they're on the right, they're like, I don't want to hear about privilege. And I get it, because privilege is another word that's been commandeered, used as a weapon.
Right.
But I find a lot of traction when I actually reframe what privilege is, because it's not a bad word. Just like diversity, equity, inclusion are not inherently bad words.
Right, exactly.
I want to take back that word because I think that word had a lot of value before we destroyed it.
Right. Well, you know what? I was doing some consulting for some superintendents in the school district. And I was on their diversity team, and what happens, they would say, we want to do this for the underprivileged. So when I got them alone, I said, please don't use the term underprivileged. That's a negative, unconditional stroke. That means that a person is born into that condition and they can never get out. I said, instead, say, the children that are having social economic challenges.
Sure.
Because challenges can be overcome.
Absolutely.
But the next statement that I made really made him sit up. I said, because the use of the word underprivileged was the forerunner to the word privilege being used in that context.
Yeah. And privilege being used as a weapon.
As a weapon.
As like, how dare you?
Right. And to say that you're privileged because of your race. My daughters are beautiful like their mom. They got pretty privilege.
Oh yeah. It's real.
Come on.
It's real.
So, one author talked about in America or in most places of the world, most people are right-handed. So you have right privilege. Yep. Most baseball gloves are made for right-handed people. And so when we start using the term, and what I counsel most of my champions on, I say, look, if somebody comes to you and say that, hey, you got privilege, turn around and ask them, how could I leverage my privilege for your benefit?
Absolutely.
Because what that does, that removes argument and put them in a place that you're just saying something. You're not going to do anything. Is there a way that I can help you elevate?
Yep. Because it does us no good to deny that we have it or to undercut what privilege we have. We all carry privilege. I mean, even you being a DEI consultant, I don't think I could be a DEI consultant. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think many people would be seeking me out to be a DEI consultant.
Right. Or for people who say that you have privilege, I guess what? Show up in South Africa and see where that privilege at.
Right.
That privilege should be gone. Show up on the south side of Atlanta and see where that privilege at. It's gone.
Yeah.
And so that privilege is it moves, it vacillates. And so it's not.
That's why when you say diversity, I always think, okay, can a person be diverse? Like one single person, you know, I guess if they have a lot of different races or whatever, but I'm saying, you know, when you describe diversity today, it used to be, okay, how many white people do you have? How many black people? Like that's a diverse environment. But now you're looking at it, and if you have a lot of color, then that's diverse. But what if it's 100% black?
Right.
Is that diverse?
Right. No, see, this is why I challenge that. You could have a room that is 100% black, but you got people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and schools. And so you could have your whole executive board can look like Skittles, a bag of M&Ms. However, everybody came from an Ivy League school. They come from the same socioeconomic background, same culture. All of them think alike. Even though pigmentation say you got diversity, I say liar, liar, pants on fire. Au contraire, mon frere.
You really look at the individual, it sounds like, and you really try to hone in on what it is about them.
Right.
So it's not just face value.
Right. It's not just face value. It's opening up the door. Like, we want to seek places where, like, say, for instance, if your organization doesn't have, I don't know why I'm on engineering, maybe because my son is an engineer. But if you're looking for some engineers and you said, hey, I need some black engineers. I need some Cushites. I need some black engineers. Well, you possibly need to go to an HBCU, historically black college and university, to get some of those. So you bring them through the door and then you begin to develop them. Because a lot of us do very well on bringing diverse groups into the organization, but we don't do a good job of developing them. As a matter of fact, I got a few little statistics I want to share with you. When I talked earlier about vision and tying DEI to the vision, one of the things that's missing in most organizations, the reason why you see homogenous groups at one level, either pigmentation or thinking, because there is a lack of coaching, mentoring, and sponsorship within organizations. If you get coaching, mentorship, and sponsoring within the culture of an organization, you will see individuals begin to rise. Promotion rates for mentored minorities and women is increased by from 15 to 38% when there's a culture of mentoring. Also, mentoring programs boosted minority representation from 9 to 24% at the management level. Both mentors and mentees are promoted 5 to 6 times more often than their peers. And then lastly, in that same vein, retention costs an organization anywhere from 30 to 400% of the annual salary of that position. So you want to make sure that you're retaining top talent. Because not only do you increase the promotion rate, but you increase the retention rate for minorities and women.
So when they're mentored, do they need to have someone of their same race mentoring them?
Not at all. And that's where we step into the brave conversations, where we have people in the organization get a little uncomfortable. IBM had a program back in the day where it was phenomenal, where they saw people reach the top ranks, women and minorities, and it was all because the CEO focused on mentoring. He would ask, when they would talk about reports, he would turn around and say, okay, but tell me about this individual within your organization. What stretch assignments are you giving her? To prepare her for the next level. And he was very intentional, and they had to report on who they were mentoring and how they were pouring into it.
You know, it seems like a lot of DEI thinking, like, you know, the white fragility type conversation and all that. It's kind of like white people, you need to get out of the way so that we can, rise, whatever it is, so the minorities can rise. But it's like your approach sounds like let's teach each other some things. Let's come together. Let's start mentoring people. But to me, I feel like the negative side of DEI has caused us to shrink back and not do the things you're saying we should do.
Exactly, because I've come into organizations, or I've heard where people brought in someone to teach bias training, and which is nothing wrong with that. However, there needs to be a redemptive element. Yeah. It needs to be an element where you don't demonize people because of their bias, but you explain to them, like my mentor would say, hey, now, he would say that if you think certain things, it's not that you're racist, it's that you're human. Now, this comes from a Puerto Rican who's from Harlem, who was a high school dropout, who graduated from Harvard, who became a DEI consultant to 5 presidents. And so he would tell me, he said, look, certain things are normal. All things aren't evil, they're just normal. Don't assume evil intent when evil things happen. Right. And that's a real challenge for us, because what happens, we see something, we say, oh man, they meant to do this, or we go the broad brush route. Now, are we saying that racism, sexism doesn't exist? I have saw racism to the full. I mean, I was a chief meteorologist in the Air Force. I've been around. I saw racism. But however, one of the first things that I look for, that I would encourage people, don't look at systemic, don't just focus on systemic inequities. Focus on your own cultural and personal inefficiencies or deficiencies. That's what I would say, because what we want to do is transition from victimhood to thinking like a champion. A champion can negotiate from a position of power. Yeah. It's just that I don't need, hey, Mr. White Man, I need you to do this for me. No. It would be in your best benefit to bring a champion like me in. When I was 19, I worked at a factory. And when I worked at this factory, it was a lot of racism in that factory. I mean, like, they would bring in a new white person. This is in Atlanta. They would bring in a new white person. The black people who've been there for a while would train the white person. The white person will be over them. Right? So it was wrong. And so, but I'm 19, they talking to me, and I'm like, they were giving people 30-cent raises. It was backbreaking work. So it came my time to get a raise. I walked through the door, and the foreman said, okay, Maurice, you've been doing a great job, and we're going to give you a 30-cent raise. I said, negative. I said, I'm looking for $1. He said, $1? Absolutely no way. I said, I work on the hardest machine in this company. My teammate and I have broken several records. And I say that you give me $1 or you're going to lose thousands of dollars in productivity when I leave. So now you get to choose. Yeah. He said, okay, I'm going to give you $1. I turned around and said, well, I was really looking for $2. He said, absolutely no way. And what he didn't know, I had went into the bathroom and wrote my resignation letter on a napkin and timed it because I was getting ready to go to the Air Force. So I slammed it on the table in front of him, and I left that day and never came back. But I was leaving to the Air Force in about a month and a half. Yeah. So this was strategic. Right. Come to find out, these people were very racist. But guess what? I called back after I came from the Air Force out of basic training. My brother said, brother, you like Martin Luther King. They say everybody in there got a raise. Really? Yeah, they say everybody got a raise. They said, brother, you shuck it up. I don't know what you did. Right. They said, but you shuck it up. But it's because, so at that level, I wasn't coming to them like a victim. I was coming to them like, hey, when you're dealing with me, this is championship business.
Right. And it's a mindset because
It's a mindset.
white people, black people, whoever it is, they have these differing mindsets.
Right.
You can go in there like a king, and
Right.
be treated like a king, or you can go in there like a pauper. And
Yeah, you can go in there, yes sir, about you go in there like that. You want to like step and fetch it. I wasn't doing that.
And you were a servant. It's not like you're not
Right.
a
I would.
servant.
Yeah. I wasn't bashing. I served them well. I wasn't undercutting them. But when it came to business, I dealt like business, and I was forthright with them.
Yeah.
And so that really kind of, because that
You
whole.
weren't saying it. You weren't saying because I'm black, you got to give.
Right.
me
I wasn't saying because I'm black.
Achieving.
Right. I said, yeah,
at the level,
exactly.
right.
This is a meritocracy.
Meritocracy. Yes.
Yeah, meritocracy. I was like, because I'm doing the business, broke several records.
Right.
And you don't want to do, and so.
The color green always.
Right.
wins out over.
Most definitely. Hey, with the Montgomery boycott, the color green, they was like, hey, they didn't want to, hey, you go to the back of the bus, okay, cool. The Montgomery bus system almost went down to zero. Yes, oh, you guys can sit any way you want.
It talks for sure.
Oh, yeah. This is where DEI really comes into it. And for my fellow DEI practitioners, I'm not here to bash you across the head, but what I am trying to, for those who think differently, trying to compel you to say that, look, let's tie DEI into cash, assets, people, profit, and growth. That's where you get people at the C-suite to buy in. They understand the pigmentation green. They understand that one. So when you speaking that language and compelling them saying you want to do this because bringing in this individual or this people group, this is how you could really establish a thing. Now, there is and it all ties back to vision, mission, and core values.
Because there's gold in people.
Yes.
And we're not always seeing the gold because of our biases.
Exactly.
Or because we think, even in the church, like something small as like doing the sound or something,
Exactly.
They're always looking for a man. Sometimes the man is practically deaf,
Right.
And my dad would do that, and he would always say, women can hear really well. They might be a little bit put off by like the technology. They're a little bit scared of working but once they learn the technology, you can't teach somebody to have a good ear. So he would always train the women, and they actually did really well, but they were hiding in plain sight because no one in the church ever picked them.
Exactly. And two, just look at the study that was done with the orchestras across America, where the majority, there were several orchestras, Chicago, Atlanta, major orchestras, 92% male. And then they begin to ask, hey, why is that? Well, the men just play better. So they started doing blind auditions where you couldn't see, and you just hear all of a sudden, those numbers went up 30, 40, 50% because they couldn't see because of bias. And we don't want to demonize bias. We just want to recognize it and make the proper correction.
Because what if there were blind auditions and nothing changed? Like,
right.
What if the people coming to the table were all women or all men or whatever, at any sort of race? Like, does that even matter? Like,
right.
Because there's more black basketball players, is that bad? Like, is that,
exactly.
Or can some people just be better and enjoy doing that more? Is that okay?
Right, because a lot of people make that argument, hey, our organization reflects what society looks like. I appreciate you. Well, tell the NBA that. Tell the NBA that you need them to look like and see what happened to your viewership. And so what we want to do, but when you talk about
Asians, like a lot of Asians in high caliber schools.
Yeah, a lot of Asians in high caliber.
We got to get those Asians.
Right. Yeah, but it's a cultural thing. It has nothing to do with intelligence. As a matter of fact, when my son spent time over in Taiwan and Taiwan or China, well, he was in Taiwan on an exchange program. Then he was over in China. Well, he was tutoring some of the Asians in calculus. as a black man. So, that would break their whole little
stereotype.
That would break their whole stereotype. My son, also another story about my boy, he turns around. This was funny. They had a Chinese delegation come into the city of Montgomery, and the mayor, my son worked for representatives in the city at the time. He was in high school. So they brought in the Chinese delegation, and his supervisor said, hey, one of my guys speaks Mandarin Chinese fluently. So my son sits in the meeting. He sees the conversation going on with the mayor and the Chinese delegation, and he can tell by Chinese culture that baby's going down. So he begins to interject and speak Mandarin. Wow. Totally shift the atmosphere, wow. Turn the meeting. And they ended up inking a deal between the mayor and the Chinese delegation, all because my boy was cross-culturally competent. He could speak Chinese. Cool. Mm-hmm. And it blew them away because of the negative connotation associated with black people. They kept saying, black boy, black boy. They were losing it. Yeah. But he totally changed the game.
It's funny because my husband grew up in Nepal, and he is a tall, giant white man. But his heart is Asian. He actually has a lot of Asian tendencies. Wow. And you would never know it. But when he gets around people from, especially small villages and things like that, he understands them in a way that they don't expect him to understand. Oh, and wow. And he can kind of speak that unspoken language.
Come on, man.
It's pretty interesting. But they won't think that about him when they first see him. But there's something underneath where they share this culture. So culture and how you look, it can be vastly different.
Exactly. And one of the cool things, man, when I was an instructor at the Senior Non-Commissioned Officers Academy, one of the people I hosted was the Tuskegee Airmen. I hosted Lieutenant Colonel Herbert E. Carter from the Tuskegee Airmen. One of the things I learned from Colonel Carter is that when it comes to racism or whatever, excellence is the equalizer. Mm-hmm. Excellence is irrefutable. Excellence brings an argument. Because everybody said, hey, this person is like LeBron James, Michael Jordan. Why are you not using them? Mm-hmm. Not only do they have the competence, but they have the character. Mm-hmm. And they have the social credits. Everybody loved them. They got the competence and character. They got the leadership acumen. Why didn't you place them in this position? Mm-hmm. Their excellence is unparalleled. Mm-hmm. And then you just sit back and watch.
If you see a man skilled in his work, he will not sit before kings. Right,
right, exactly.
He will sit before kings.
He will sit before kings. And so the level of excellence that a person brings, regardless of gender, race, or whatever, even when it comes to the LGBT community, somebody coming in with excellence, that person is going to be promoted because, again, nobody's placing bedroom cams.
Yeah, and there are unfair things that happen.
Yes.
That we all have privilege in a certain area, and we walk through times where we have the opposite of privilege.
Exactly.
Maybe your pretty privilege gets you so far, but then it makes other people mad and it shuts you down.
Right.
So, I mean, we all experience these things, but you're saying that in the end, if you continue in what you know is right to do, and you treat people well, and you do an excellent job at what you do, you're going to rise.
Right. And one of the big things you could do, though, is get that mentorship. Seek out that mentorship. Now,
who are you looking for when you're looking for?
When I'm looking for mentorship, I'm looking for someone that's well advanced or slight. They don't have to be well advanced, but they need to be
ahead of you.
Ahead of me.
In some area.
In some area, and they need to have the character. So they need to have my two things for leadership: competence and character. Mm-hmm. I'm seeking competence and character within a space. And when I'm looking at somebody to mentor, I have an acrostic called EAR, ear. Your mentor isn't the person attempting to pour into you, it's the person who you turn your ear toward.
Interesting, wow.
And so ear stands for eagerness. Whenever that person is eager, hungry, like getting at it. A is action oriented. They taking what you learning and then they're getting in there. And there's more to it now. I'm just cursory glance. And then R is responsible. They begin to take that leadership mantle and what they learned and begin to steward at a greater level. They begin to lead.
Right.
And so that is huge. So getting a mentor is extremely important. Mentorship will get you somewhere. And one way of sustaining mentors is being honorable.
Yeah.
It's honoring. But the next level above mentorship that most people lack is sponsorship. Sponsorship, a sponsor speaks about you in rooms that you don't have access to. That really opens doors.
Right.
And so first, seek a mentor.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to sponsorship, I got a different acrostic for sponsorship. Who I would sponsor, I won't touch on that now. But look, this thing is huge. Whenever we got coaching, mentorship, and sponsorship within our organizations, we're dealing with the root of an issue. The fruit is going to manifest later.
Yeah.
The fruit of diversity, diverse talent, everything is going to manifest later.
Wow.
But we don't want to demonize. We don't want to come through demonized. We don't want to come through saying that, hey, you don't have any black men doing what? It may be a true thing, but what I really want to say is, you know what? I know William over there got the skill set and the character for this position. He'd been here longer than the other guy. Why wasn't he considered?
Right.
Can we talk about what he needs to develop?
Right.
When you come with that type of approach instead of accusatory, then doors begin to open.
Yeah. So you do this for organizations and for people. So how do people get a hold of you? And if they like this idea, this new idea of DEI and how to apply it, how do they get you?
Well, you can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Maurice Mo Arnold. So you can catch me on LinkedIn and reach out that way. Or you could reach me via email at maurice@mo-losophy.com. You can catch me there.
I could put that in the notes, yeah.
Put that in the notes. Or you can reach out via my website and put your contact information in there. And one thing about it, if you reach out to me, hold on, let me get this here. If you reach out, I will provide the statistics I was sharing about diversity with an infographic that I created. So reach out and I can get that to you.
And you've done schools, you've done
schools. I've done schools. I spoke in front of the police department, did the regional police chiefs,
awesome.
that type of thing. Spoke to the military. And what's beautiful about it, when you have young people come up and tell you that we've heard many speakers, we don't listen to anybody, but sir, we listen to you. I was like, wow. And then so another young man said, hey, what you shared was so fair across the board. Wow. And to hear that from the young guns,
that's cool.
Who would usually be typing in their phones while speakers are talking, they were locked in.
Yeah, because you're just taking truth, old-fashioned truth, but you're running it through a lens of culture right now and what people are asking for right now. So even if you're an anti-DEI person, we can use this language, and it's not bad. It's actually, you're bringing truth into it. So
exactly. Now, I want to ask you, could I place this podcast on my Molosophy YouTube channel?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh man, come on. Yeah, my Molosophy YouTube. I got to put this on here, man, because
you're sponsoring me all the time, he said.
Come on. Oh my God. Yeah, most definitely. And I know that Molosophy and Brave Nation will be working together.
Oh, yeah.
Because I appreciate what you're doing and how you are bringing redemptive language into spaces.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're bringing redemptive language where it's irrefutable. Like if you want to embrace a lie, you can embrace the lie. But man, I brought you something that's sweet.
Yes. And it does. It crosses bridges, and that's what we really need today. So I really appreciate you listening to this. And if you might need language for what you do. It's interesting that you use this language, cultural, you used architects, right?
Right. Organizational architects and cultural consultants.
Well, I use cultural architects, and I'm actually developing a class coming up here called Cultural Architects.
Oh, wow.
A cultural architects workshop.
Oh, my gosh.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, we gotta talk more about that. And so, yeah, definitely reach out and be glad to talk to you. Now the power of the consultancy isn't the domain knowledge. It's all about the overall picture, the personnel, and the process design. That's what we really help at. Because I believe that I use an acrostic, HOW, how. I'm here to harvest organizational wisdom. Because all the answers are within your organization, but with me coming in and with my sister Lee coming into your organization, we would see things that you possibly wouldn't see. It doesn't make us better. It's just we coming in from a different perspective. Yeah. And we could harvest that organizational wisdom and cause your institution to rise, because I'm all about maximizing, my moniker is maximizing team talent and level of engagement. Yeah. If you increase level of engagement by a small percentage, revenue goes up big time.
I talk about that too, engagement with your strengths, focusing on your strengths.
Come on.
Yeah, pulling all that out. I do consulting as well, consulting and coaching, but I've been focusing more on classes and helping people find out what the gem of what God created you for. So
come on.
We've been doing
the same thing. I've been speaking to schools on how to help their people and organizations on how to discover the genius within your organization and how to walk them through.
It's right there. You just have to tap into it. So
come on.
I hope you're encouraged today by this, and we're going to have some more conversations for sure. Thank you so much, Mo, for coming on.
Come on. Absolutely my pleasure.
All right. We'll talk more.